right, we're here with Giacomo Zucco. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here, for being with us. Giacomo, RGB is on mainnet. Finally, we're alive. And how do you feel?
Well, very, very glad after many years of ideas and research and development. When I first heard about the version 0.11.1 to be ready for mainnet, it was something that I was expecting since a very long time. It took a while because the concept is very radical and it was leveraging the Lightning Network, which was itself evolving at a very high speed and in a very deep way. Many years ago, in 2016, we were researching the so-called colored coin protocols using Bitcoin to represent generic assets, and they were pretty bad in the sense that we analyzed them and found them in contrast with Bitcoin's fungibility and privacy. They were basically degrading Bitcoin's fungibility and privacy. They were degrading scalability, introducing spam on the blockchain and with worse scalability properties. And they were introducing weird incentives for miners, what is now called MEV. So we were dissatisfied with these ideas like Coin Prism, Colu, CoinSpark, Omni, Counterparty, and we started to look elsewhere. At the same time, Peter Todd presented an idea for Bitcoin itself, so not for assets, but for Bitcoin, that was called client-side validation. The idea was that the Bitcoin design itself, while very simple, and that's a good thing, was also not optimal. The idea that miners should validate everything while they include the transactions in block is something suboptimal. The best way will be to send all the validation logic off chain and only use the chain to prevent double spending with a construct that Peter called single-use seals. So he presented that at the same time, and we were working together in Milan in our Bitcoin research laboratory, and we basically came up with the idea that client-side validation would be the best way to do generic assets on Bitcoin. If that was impossible for Bitcoin itself, maybe it was at least possible for this kind of issued assets. And then we started to work on that, but there was a problem. The problem was that the UX of this idea, of Peter's idea, was bad. Specifically, you are supposed to be online to receive assets, unlike with an on-chain Bitcoin transaction, and you need to update your backup every time you receive something, which is a bad UX compared to a seed phrase, for example. But then I realized a couple of years later that the Lightning Network has the very same trade-offs. So I just said to myself, if we can make the Lightning Network work, then we can make client-side validation for us at work. And then my wife Mir came up with the name RGB, and in reference to the old colored coins idea, plus the name of the people working on it. And so we started working on it, and RGB was born and presented to the world in a Lisbon conference of building of Bitcoin, hosted by Kevin. The typical purpose of an association supporting an open source protocol, which is basically steering the development and the adoption of the protocol. So you create a brand so that people can easily converge and coordinate around the protocol. The problem with protocols is that they work if everybody use them, and if everybody use the same or as little as possible, a short number of different interoperable protocols. So the purpose of association is to coordinate people basically. So advance it, because there is still a lot of research to be done, promote it, expand it, and to some way consolidate and converge the different ideas. I see two of them, short term and long term. Short term, the killer use case is, of course, USDT. Paolo Ardoino mentioned RGB several times in his tweets and public interviews. Bitfinex was supporting RGB together with other companies for many years. So it's clear that USDT is a good use case. In particular, USDT is a use case of legal arbitrage. So if you try to move around dollar-denominated credit with a centralized system, with a centralized database, the company managing the database will be required to follow the same regulations as PayPal to basically KYC all users and censor and blacklist While if you move around these credits on a neutral layer, which is not controlled by any company, an interesting situation arises. The primary market, when the centralized issuer is issuing and redeeming, that's super regulated. You cannot escape regulation there. But the secondary market, when the claim is just transferred, it becomes a little bit outside of the regulation. There are still some overreach, successful example of regulators imposing blacklists, but it becomes way better for freedom of transactions. So that's a use case that requires a decentralized system or a kind of decentralized enough to please regulators. But usually that comes with the fact that without a proper protocol on Bitcoin, the layers that you have at your disposals are shitcoin scams, where there is also not just a scam for the regulator, which is a good thing, but also a scam for the investors, which is a bad thing, specifically the Tron token, the Ether token. So these are Ponzi schemes, these are pump and dump schemes that are scamming investors, so honest people, not just regulators. So it's bad. And everybody would like, well, everybody, most Bitcoin maximalists would like to have a layer to transact this kind of token without promoting indirectly a scam token. So USDT is itself not a scam for the user because you cannot promise a user to make money out of USDT. If you buy one USDT, the best case scenario you get back in dollar if you're lucky. So there is no investment scheme there. So it's very honest from the point of view of the user. It just gives you some freedom in the secondary market. That's a claim, and that's an honest claim as long as it lasts the scheme. So it's something that I think short term is very fit for RGB. RGB can provide the same level of plausible deniability for the company in the secondary market without promoting a scam indirectly, like all these shitcoins. But this is a short-term goal because as any regulatory arbitrage, eventually it may end. The regulators may just become smarter, they just may become more active and stop it. There is a long-term use case as well, which is the original idea of Peter Todd, using RGB for Bitcoin itself. So as soon as we have a proper mechanism to convert an RGB token into an unlocking mechanism on a real Bitcoin UTXO, so basically we have a two-way peg, we can do RGBTC. RGBTC is basically representation of sets of actual UTXOs inside RGB tokens. When that happens, we can have an incredible boost in Bitcoin's privacy, fungibility, because at this point you cannot know anymore. When you see a UTXO spent on Bitcoin, you don't know anymore the actual amount which is being transferred. There is an amount which is transparent on chain, but then there may be an RGB amount with a single use seal. It also improves scalability a lot because with one single spending you can batch many transactions, and it also improves censorship and manipulation incentives with miners.
So actually, short answer for that. How about shitcoins on RGB then? The
Well,
controversy.
that will happen. It will happen in two ways. If you create an option to create assets, people will create assets. Most assets are a few assets are scamming the regulators, which I claim is a good thing. Many assets are actually scamming the investor of the asset, which are the shitcoins. They are trying to emulate Bitcoin. If you create a new standard just for the novelty of it, scams will come. So I expect many RGB scams. Some of them may be using the RGB name directly, like they may start to issue the RGB token. If you see an RGB token, stay away from it. It will be a scam.
Plus, let's not forget that shitcoins on Bitcoin already exists.
Yeah, we're not bringing in this pestilence because it's already in. So if anything, we're just diluting the overall mind share of different protocols to do shitcoining. The good thing is that the novelty effect goes away fast. So now that RGB is in production, there may be a wave of scams on RGB, but then scammers will need novelty again in order to proliferate, and so they will move to something else, something fancy, and RGB can be used for short-term use cases like USDT or long-term use cases like RGBTC. That's a very interesting question. So For Bitcoin, what I'm seeing is that the scalability and the privacy model is going in the direction of generalizing the Lightning Network in the sense of making the Lightning Network a invoicing, swapping, and routing protocol, universal language for different security models. So right now you have many wallets in which you can receive some sats in eCash, or you can receive those sats in Liquid, or you can receive those sats in Spark, which is a state chain, or Arc, which is like an advanced version of a Lightning channel, or in the traditional Driapun Lightning channels, or on-chain. And across all of these things, there are atomic swaps. So a company like Bolts is basically enabling the ecosystem in a trustless way. Bolts cannot run away with the money, but still you can use Aqua Wallet, Bull Bitcoin Wallet to swap on-chain, off-chain, on Lightning, and even Phoenix will swap between on-chain, off-chain, Aqua will swap with Liquid, and Minibits will swap with Akash, and Blitz Wallet will swap with everything. So that's the direction of Bitcoin, which makes a lot of sense. It's like we're using different security models for different amounts, and we are seamlessly swapping across the security models. That makes sense. With assets, we have gone through a phase in which asset protocol were competing. So people were asking me, should I issue these on liquid confidential assets or on RGB? And the idea was, well, we should decide based on the trade-offs. But actually, since the Bitcoin Lightning Network is evolving in this model, I think that the RGB ecosystem will evolve in the same idea, and RGB, being new and being very abstract, is very well positioned to be itself a generic asset protocol that can harmonize and seamlessly swap with other asset protocols. So what I imagine is a wallet that when you receive an asset which is worth barely anything, you will receive that as an eCash token, which has very, very interesting properties. And the centralized issuer is also the mint, because you don't need a lot of legal arbitrage for the mint. Then when the value increases, or when the criticality of the asset increases, you may move on liquid confidential assets or Spark or Arc assets. All of these protocols are creating their own asset protocols. And then when you have to go on-chain, you need actual RGB. So when you need on-chain UTXOs on Bitcoin to provide double spending protection, that's where you actually have RGB. So RGB is the on-chain version of the Lightning Network swap ecosystem, which means that if in the Lightning Network, at the center of all this liquid, Driapun, Arc, you have the on-chain swap as the final maximum security level, RGB is the equivalent for issued assets. So I think the two kind of paradigms can harmonize pretty well.
Giacomo, thank you very much.
My pleasure.